Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey, guys, it's John Davis, and I'm here. And I have to tell you, my favorite part of doing a Spirit Cafe with Tamara Zoner is as that music is playing, her shoulders are bobbing and she's head moving and she's all very excited about the music. And it's one of my favorite parts of doing these podcasts is that who cares about the rest of the episode? It's all about Tamara Zoner dancing while the music is playing. We have had a great run of guests recently, and Tamara is very wise in saying, hey, we need to have a conversation, just the two of us, because we need to kind of catch up and figure out where we are in the world. And so today's episode is exactly that. It's just going to be Tamara Zoner and myself having a conversation. And it's going to be an interesting conversation. And before we have that conversation, of course, I've been talking about her a lot, so I think I should probably bring her into the conversation. Hello, Tamara Zoner. How are you?
Hello, John Davis. I'm good. I'm still bopping along to that music.
I love it. I love the song. It makes me smile as I watch you because I can see what you're doing while it's happening. So it just it makes me just chuckle. I'm sitting there like, that's good
music. It's got a good beat, and I can dance to it.
Yeah, man. There you go. That is the key. Yeah, and it gives you a really good feeling, right?
It does. To use a coffee pun, it perks me up.
Oh, my brother's band recently played at a coffee shop, and it was warm enough that they actually had the concert outside. Mm-hmm. I said to him, so technically, is that a parking lot show?
So sorry, listeners.
That
was just terrible.
Well, I am at the age where, and I am a father, so it's allowed to do dad jokes occasionally.
I know. Actually, my teenage daughter does dad jokes. So
really,
oh my gosh! And sometimes they're really funny. I do enjoy a good dad joke, John.
Are you judging me? Judge not, lest ye shall be judged. As they
say. Talk about that then. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the feeling of spiritual people, the feeling that we get. Now, these people who've listened to Spirit Cafe have often heard me talk about the moment of meeting Tamara Zoner. Was having her walk in the room and feeling her presence, right? Feeling that vibration, feeling that joy, that love, that sincerity, that authentic person. In my past life regression, before Jeshua touched me on the heart and I had that full unconditional love experience, the first thing you hear me say is, oh my God, you can feel him. Mm-hmm. You can feel the presence of this person. We recently had a guest on our podcast called Hema Vyas. Mm-hmm. And Hema starts talking and I just want to sit down on the ground at her feet and listen because there's this feeling that comes from her. We had another guest, Justin Caffrey, same thing. There's just a feeling that you get from these very deeply spiritual people. And to me, it's one of the unifying forces that I see in spiritual people. Unifying is the wrong way of saying that. It's one of the common mm-hmm. forces that I see with spiritual people is they have that feeling about them. What do you think that feeling is?
Well, my brain goes straight to science. And what science has actually found is that we have this electromagnetic field around our hearts that extends out around us. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that the way that time and space and energy works is that even if we're connecting virtually, we can still feel that, that energy that's radiating from someone's heart. And that's definitely what we felt with Hema and so many others, Justin, and that one other, I think there was another John who was the channeler. who just, oh my gosh, just felt like a big
Oh,
download of love.
I was Laura Marie Haley.
Her too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like a handful. And Kim Carey too. Like, so many
Oh,
of these people who are deeply connected with spirit. And I just have to pause and say that I'm always so humbled and grateful when you talk about when we met. It makes my heart expand. So thank you.
it makes well meeting you made mine expand because it was, I mean, you literally, I mean, let me kind of tap into that story again. I was in a room that was everyone was afraid to speak. I mean, I was in there preparing for a class, and they were walking in, and they were like being all, and the room seemed dark and cave like. And then Tamara's owner entered the room, and it was like, bam! The lights turned on in not only the room but in the people. The people around you started smiling and talking to you, and you were conversing with them. It changed everything instantaneously. My friend Todd has the same thing. Todd, when I often tell the story of Todd in Afghanistan with a little girl with the ball and the spinning the ball, and she was a child who had walked into a minefield and
Oh
and
gosh.
was in a hospital, and he, without being able to speak to her, just with the feeling and the expression that he was giving to her, changed her experience in a huge way. But Todd walks into the room and everyone feels better. Todd walks into the room, everyone feels. Now you talk about science. They've done scientific studies on meditation, and they know that if you take two meditators and you put them in the same building and you put them in separate rooms and they can't see each other and they both meditation, there's a great percentage of the time that those two meditators' hearts will sync up and their
Mm,
breathing will sync up. They'll literally get into rhythm with each other. That outer connectedness becomes one, right?
yeah.
They did a study on transcendental meditators in New York City. They brought them into the city and to meditate on the feeling of just peace.
Mhm.
And the crime rate dropped 30% while they were there.
It's
And,
amazing, isn't it?
and right. And then they left the city and it rose right back up. So it was kind of the empirical evidence. They kind of proved that it was like only while they were there and that was happening.
Right.
So
I used to work for this chiropractor when I lived in Singapore, and she didn't do traditional manipulation. She would work on 3 clients at a time in a room, and she would touch points along the spine and train the clients to the highest vibrating.
mm,
And it like was such an amazing place to work, not only because I could be barefoot, because the energy of it was so beautiful. And I feel like I benefited from it just by sitting I was the
yeah.
front office person, and it just felt so good in there
Mm.
that you walked in and your body started relaxing and vibrating higher, right?
Right, right. So with you, you get that experience was very visceral. You felt it.
Yeah.
You could feel it. When you walked into the room, I could feel you walking into the room. So is that a choice?
Oh, great question. And I say yes and no. So I say yes because I have a purpose, right? I have a purpose to bring love and share love and spread love wherever I go, and to hold a space and to raise a space. And so I want everyone who interacts with me to lift up when I'm with them. And that is just the way that I carry myself through the world most often. I can't say that I necessarily always do that when I walk into the grocery store.
Mm,
But most often, when I am coming into a room or a space or a place where, presence matters,
mm,
then I activate that presence. And I feel like, and I didn't even know that I did that back then, right?
mm,
Years later, I'm more aware of how I can actually do that consciously. And it's as if I just gather all the love in my heart and then extend it out around
Right.
me while literally holding the space. So lifting it up. It's like a big, giant, energetic hug to whomever is like within 100 feet of me.
Right. Right.
And so it's just like this force field of love that's whacking people over and lifting them up.
Mm,
And then I would say, so that's my yes. And then no, because some people have just cultivated their hearts and their energy and their consciousness in a way that they don't have to do anything. And we
right.
feel it,
Right.
right? And we feel it. And I'm not necessarily consciously thinking of doing that, when we first get onto this podcast recording,
Right.
or even that day when I walked into that room. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go lift people up. I was just like, cool, that's the speaker I wanted to meet. What's next?
Right. Right.
And then just like, hey, I see you and you're neat. Let's meet. Let's
Right.
find out about each other.
Right.
So I think that's the no. It's like some of us are just moving through the world very naturally.
Right. 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 And the people who move through naturally with that sense of fun and joy and positivity are obviously very attractive to everyone around them, because
Mhm.
it's like because positivity attracts, right?
Right.
And so they look at you and they go, oh, I like her. I just get a feeling that I like her, right? Period. There's no
Right.
there's no thought, and I think that it's really interesting. I work with clients all the time about helping them on their spiritual path, and I had one just recently tell me a story, but she had a session with me, and then one of the things I said was, when you go out into the world, just, walk with joy, walk with love, and then, give a smile. Right. And
Mhm.
she tried it out, and she went to get a cup of coffee at a convenience store, and she said, I'm just going to try it out here. And she got like 4 compliments while she was in the store. And people were like, oh, you look great. Oh my God, you look wonderful. Your shoes are perfect. People started noticing her because of what she was putting out. And I
Mhm.
think that this couple things about truly spiritual people. Number one, they realize it's not all about them. They realize that it is about inclusivity, and we're all one. And
Mhm.
so their intention is good towards all. And
Mhm.
so that's a positive intention. The other thing is that spiritual people and people who've really studied spirituality, it becomes very habitual for them. They're just naturally that way because it's now habit, because they've studied. Now, some people come into this world naturally feeling that way,
Mhm.
and I've met people who just had a sunny disposition from the get go. Now the question is, where did they come into this world more enlightened? Possibly, but I think the idea of that, the feeling that we get from a spiritual person really comes from the fact that it is truly a positive experience that is not narcissistic in any way.
Right. I was just thinking along the same lines, not that word specifically, but there's an alignment
Mm,
in a person who feels good to be around. They're not just fun, because you can have fun people, but you know, I can see the pain underneath the show of fun. And then you have people who are aligned, and that's part of the reason why they feel so good to be around, because there's this genuineness
right,
about
right,
them, right? This, like, they've walked through it, they've gone through it, they've done it, they've been there, and here they are fully aligned with their values, and they're living.
mm, right. Wow. I love that where you just took this, because I'm very blessed in the fact that I did Renaissance festivals, and I was surrounded by comedians
Mhm.
all the time. Right. And it's very interesting. Many of them were very, very, very funny people, but many of them were very flawed people who were struggling with a lot of their own stuff. And it really came down to a point where, like, we would go, we would go out to dinner, and we'd always go, where do you want to go for dinner? Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? And then there'd be this hours long struggle about where they want to go. And I discovered eventually.
Question. That's the real question of life.
Well, the interesting, yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, the interesting thing was I discovered that I could always eat where I wanted to eat, because the conversation would start, where do you want to go? I said, oh, we're all going to, and I would say where I wanted to go. And I would start it into the consciousness that that's where everyone was going. And I would always eat where I wanted to eat. But then what was happening is I get to the restaurant and there'd be a table of 15, 20, 30 people sometimes who would just show up, right? And we love those big party gatherings, right? But the issue with those party gatherings are twofold. One, it's going to take you a while to get served, right? And two, if you sit next to the wrong people, your evening can be screwed, right? Right. And when I said the wrong people, I mean comedians, right? Because if you sit next to comedians, they're going to spend the entire dinner trying to one up each other comedically, because they've derived their power from the comedy. Right. And they're not really thinking about anybody else or anything else. They're thinking about, how can I be better than that guy next to me? And it becomes very tedious very quickly. So I would always get to the restaurant a little late, and I would see where the biggest ego comedians were.
Right. That ego was the word I was just thinking.
Right. Yeah. And I would sit at the other side of the table, away from them. And I always ate where I wanted. I always sat next to the people I wanted to sit next to. Right. It was the best. But the idea is that even fun people, that's just what you were talking about before, even fun people cannot be deeply spiritual people.
Right. You know, it can be in a lot of people who try to be the life of the party and be the most fun person there, or always be game for fun, are also like the most lonely and the most insecure, and really living from ego, like, because their soul isn't fed. They need their ego to be fed. And, you know, I love them. I love them because they need so much love. And also they're often exhausting to be around, right? It's actually a drain. It can be fun for a little while, but then it's this drain, at least for people like us who are in tune with emotion and empathic to an extent, and who see through facades, you know.
Right.
It can be so exhausting. So we have to also be, and all of us have to be so mindful of who we surround ourselves with, and are they nourishing us, or are they depleting us?
There you go. You led me to another great conversation. So yeah,
I'm great at segues today.
You are. So much like you, I feel, I am very empathic. I feel emotions of people when I come into a room, as most people do. Some people are more attuned to it because they've become aware of it. Right. And they've actually taken the time to say, oh, I get this now. I understand this. I found the more loving you are, and the more quote unquote spiritual you are, it's a weird way to say it, but the more loving you are in the world, the more negativity stands out. Like, you think? Very, oh my God. So the third wife, she was a mistake from day one, but for me personally, but greatest lessons that I learned in that one. But like, she owned booths at Renaissance festivals, and I went out to see her in Texas. And I got there and I was really excited. I'd never seen that fair before. And this is going to be cool, new experience. And I was in her booth, and I met a guy who was really funny. He came up, his name was Cowboy, and he was a very 1920s style cowboy. He had a mustache that started at his nose and went to his chin, and came out to the side like this. It was really crazy. I enjoyed him. And then so he and I were laughing. It was a good time. And then her next friend came up, and she says, how are you today? He said, well, you know, and Eeyore came out. right, right. Eeyore, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't good. Then her next friend came up, well, and then her next friend came up, well, and it was like all day long. This parade of Eeyores came into the room. And about the ninth one, I was just like, I'm out of here. I literally had to leave the space because I could not take any more of the negativity that was coming in the door. So I think that spiritual people also have to be very aware of their own space. Even though they are about everyone, there are some times that the people will not be altered by the love that you're presenting. And you have to realize that's okay to let them go. Yeah. Well, and it's okay to let them go, right? It's okay to let them go.
And too, that those Eeyores, as we might call them, they're drawn to us as well because they are a lot of them, not all of them, are seeking that spark of light and they don't know how to access it. And so they are drawn to those among us who are radiating a spiritual energy of love and light. And you're right. We do have to be able to have healthy boundaries around them and to be able to go like brush ourselves off after,
right.
And that doesn't mean that I won't share space with them, but that I'm aware of, like you figured out, right? How much I can take.
Right. And being okay with walking away because
yes.
It's got to be a give and take. It's got to be one of those situations. To be spiritual, you have to also give to self because it is
you have to first give to self, right? In my opinion, I'm always saying this on all of my stuff. You have to fill your own cup and pour and serve from the overflow.
Right. Exactly.
Not draining it for others, but having so much that you're overflowing, and that's what the rest of the world gets, and you get the fullness of your own love and the love of your source, or the yada yada.
Right. I remember one of the compliments I got years ago is one of the best compliments I think I've ever gotten was someone who I very much respected. He was a stage performer. We were sharing a stage with another act. And after the show day, we were all at a party. We're just sitting around. And he says, John, let me tell you about you. I was like, this is going to be interesting. He says, I watch performers all over this country. I go to stages and I watch their shows. He says, and there's a type of performer who walk on stage and they take 20 minutes to warm up their audience to get them to like them. He says, you walk on stage and they just love you. Why is that? And my response is because I love them first.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I was thinking because you're a big teddy bear.
Well, there is that too. A friend of mine used to call me Teddy Ruxpin. But I walk on stage and I know when I walk on stage, we're there to laugh and have a good time with each other. Right? And the other person walks on stage and they're there to try to get approval before we laugh.
Yeah, see, it goes right back to where we started. It's like I'm bringing the love out, not trying to get love from.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what you do, and I think that's what Hema does, and Justin does, and they bring that love first.
Tell us how much you loved Hema. She was so amazing. I am now officially stalking her. She's on Insight Timer, and I've gone to her website and I joined her community, and I'm just basking in her talks and in her meditations. And
when I first met her for Interaction Hero, I booked her through Podmatch, and then I was going through her stuff, and I was like, okay, I hope this is as good as it looks. right. And because you never know. You never know. Right?
Learning.
right. And you go, okay, well, let's just do it. And so you go and you do it. And she and I started talking, and it was just like, oh my God. Oh, I mean, and you could feel her presence.
Yeah.
On a Zoom call,
So it's almost takes you by surprise because she's very soft spoken, very like, not like me, like blah, right? Or you.
Right. Right.
She's just
Well, you and
very,
I are stage performers, and
right.
that's where we
She's
come
very
from.
soft, but she in her softness holds the your attention and your heart and your and the audience, and it's just so magnificent.
And you listen to her speak, and you're only touching the surface of her wisdom.
Mhm.
There's so much more depth of wisdom in this person that you're talking to, and you want to just sit there and go, give it all to me, right? And
I'd go to her church for sure.
absolutely, I'm so amazed by people like her, and I'm amazed by people like you too, Tamara, because I mean, you walk into a room and you change the room, and to me, that is so amazing. It's such an amazing experience, that you just come in and you affect the people around you, and Hema's the same way, and Justin's the same way, and I'm always so, what's the word I'm looking for? Moved
Mm.
when I experience people like you, because it's like, wow, there's a breath of fresh air, and yet there's so much more. It's, you know what I mean? It's like there's so much more there that I'm not experiencing, and it's so. Hema is the same way. As I want to just sit there. And I told the story when we interviewed Hema about being at the feet of Dr. Hakim in Egypt. You have to picture when I say Dr. Hakim, one of the most famous archaeologists or Egyptologists in Egypt, and he had a very, very spiritual and metaphysical sort of feel about him. And I ended up meeting him because I lovingly became friends with the guys who rent camels and horses on the Giza Plateau. And I was sitting at the stables smoking hookah pipes with these guys, having a great time. And next thing you know, I'm invited to go to Dr. Hakim's house, right? So I'm in Dr. Hakim's house. And he is now, to picture Dr. Hakim, the way I describe Dr. Hakim, the actor Fred Gwynn, you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
He played Herman Munster on the Munsters.
Now I do. Yes.
So now imagine him, but Egyptian, dark skinned, really tall, wearing this the robe and the headdress and the whole bit, right? But it looks like Fred Gwynn as an Arab or as an Egypt, right?
Uh-huh.
And but just quiet. And we went to he took us to his house, and he's like, let me make you tea. And he went and he made us tea. This is like one of the foremost Egyptologists in the world, but you could feel this presence from him. And I wanted to just sit.
Humility in there too, right? There's a humility, there's humbleness. That's like,
Yes.
it's not like I am so great and I'm going to tell you how great I am.
Right.
I'm going to tell you how spiritual I am. I'm going to tell you why you should listen to me. Right? No,
See,
we show instead of tell. We tell, of course, but we're
yeah.
showing with our being.
Well, and even I agree with you 100%. I also love the fact that for most of the spiritual people that I've met, truly spiritual people I've met, they understand that they have to lead someone to discovery rather than give them information.
Yes. Like it's about inviting them in, right?
And letting them discover it, because they're going to retain it at that point.
And empowering them to like, don't tell me you will teach me all the things in the world. Tell me how I can learn them for myself, right? It's that whole give a man or teach a man to fish analogy.
Yeah. Give them a fish, you feed them for a day. You teach them a fish, you feed them for a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Like we are our own greatest resource. And I think I put out a post on Instagram this morning. I was inspired. I was up really, really early, as I mentioned before we got on air.
And by the way, she was up at 4:44 this morning.
4:44, I woke up. Apparently, I had been given a message to share. And in fact, I shared about Spirit Cafe on my Instagram account because I just felt like people had to know on Instagram that they could pick and choose for themselves what worked for themselves, and that Nobody needs a middleman,
Mhm.
right? No one needs a middleman. You have access to the greatest source of all directly, right? You don't need us, although we love it that you're here and listening. And we both love it when you reach us and contact us and hire us. And ultimately, we're just helping you to unlock the cupboard door. That's it. But
Right.
everything you need is already in there.
Right. It's true. And that, that was the guy that I learned from, many years ago, a couple thousand years ago. He, he was the same way. He
Throw
was
that in there, isn't
exactly
he,
what he
you
said.
guys?
What'd you say?
He's always throwing that one in there.
But it's because that's what he taught.
Yeah.
That it's right here, right now. You have the connection. You have the source, right? And you don't need a middleman. You don't need him. You don't need Buddha. You don't need Krishna. You don't need Muhammad. You don't need anybody else. You need you and your source.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I would say this: all the spiritual people we've talked about so far, we experience them in our present moment. They were living their spirituality now, rather than relying on 2,000-year-old ancient text.
Right.
And I get into arguments often with people who want to challenge my belief system. And the first thing I start with is I respect your beliefs. If you don't believe what I'm talking about, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to find what's in your heart to be true for you and to follow it. Right. If what I'm saying doesn't match, then it's not for you. Let those who have eyes to see, and those who have ears to hear. It's all about you finding your own pathway and your own connection to source. And that was where the thing from Jeshua was all about that. It was all about that you are the power, not me. And I think that present moment, that I am, and amen means present moment. It has to be brought into here and now. I mean, when you walk into that room, that wasn't 2,000 years ago. That was in that moment, and it made a huge impact, right? And when we recorded our interview with Hema, that was in that moment. Absolutely. That was in that present moment, right?
So grounded, so present.
Right. So every time we've had these experiences with these spiritual people, it's been in the here and now, not in the past, not in the future. That's where the real spiritual nature is in the here and now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is also a part of what we feel from deeply spiritual and authentically spiritual people is that is their presence. That is presence where they've all their energy is right here and now. They're not off, thinking about what they did this morning or yesterday or last week or where they're going to be 2 weeks from now. They're like in this moment, right here with you, for you now.
Wow, I want to do a piece of graphic art that says presence is present.
Yeah.
And because that would be like, it kind of says it, right?
So if you're thinking about Christmas gifts this year or other holiday gifts, your presence is the present, right? Especially if you're a parent, right?
Yeah. It's so awesome to take this present moment and talk to you about deep topics.
I love it, John. See, tell us what you think, listeners. Don't you love it when it's just John and me once in a while, having these kind of like the good old days back in January when we started.
Like the good old days. Yeah,
a couple months. Spirit Cafe, as we're reaching. How old are we now? We're like 7 or 8 months old.
Right. Well, but we just recorded our 42nd episode.
We're 42.
Right. We are the nature of the universe.
Almost as old as me now.
Well, it was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What's the secret of the universe? 42.
Yeah. That's gonna be a breakout episode. Is that Hema's?
No.
Oh well.
It's the one where we had technical difficulties on the visuals.
Okay, it could still be a breakout video.
Maybe,
Not the video, but the
maybe.
audio. Obviously, the video won't be. You guys will
Right,
miss
right.
that. Sounds like we're about ready to.
So let's talk about what's coming up, so the audience knows what's coming up.
Cool.
We have Hema coming up next week.
What won't it be last week? By the time there's
well, yes. Yeah, you will have already heard Hema by the time you hear, because this will be last week.
We're confused by the present.
I am confused by the present. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed Hema. Okay, so what's coming up now? Because Hema came out today.
Okay.
Right? I think so. I think Hema came out. No, actually, no, Hema did not come. Hema came out 2 weeks ago. So that's what this is.
Okay, so when people are listening to this episode, Emma came out 2 weeks ago. We are so sorry.
I believe so. Hang on, I'm going to double check just because.
The time warp of podcasting.
I'm opening up my. Okay, so okay. Hema comes out on the 22nd, and then our next guest is John Goff on the 29th. Okay, and then the week after that will be Deanna. Oh, will be this episode, yes. Right. And then the week after that will be Deanna Fitzpatrick, the psychic medium.
Oh, okay. So we have coming up for you, friends, Deanna Fitzpatrick.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. There you go. Now we've figured it all out. Do I edit this part out or not? Nah, I'm going to keep it in just so you can see, so that we're bat stuff crazy.
Well, we're real. That's the truth right there. We're real, and we don't fake it, and we don't make ourselves prettier than we are. we're just human.
Well, and in reality, we've already talked about the idea. I think you may have already mentioned it in this episode that time and space are irrelevant, right? So, in essence, Hema's episode is already happening. And it hasn't happened yet. So it's all there you go. That was a long way to go, wasn't it?
All right. I think it's time to wrap it up. John either needs a nap or more coffee, and same here. I do want to remind our listeners that if you love us, like we love you, we each have our own YouTube channel as well. So if you just can't get enough of John or Tamara, visit us on YouTube. John has John of New, and I'm Tamara's owner, and we're both sharing love in our own unique ways. So as well, our appreciation for you, our gratitude for you, and please leave us a comment, a review, and let us know what you think, because that helps us reach more listeners and help more people out there recover from the dogma of religion and the guilt. So
were you doing my voice? Were you doing my voice?
I'm trying, yeah.
The guilt or dogma of religion.
Guilt and dogma of religion. See, Tamara can do John's voice. All right. I'm giddy. Let's go. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.